Good afternoon, guys. It's Workin, bringing you a quick update on Bitcoin. Hope you guys are having a wonderful afternoon. We're looking at Bitcoin to the US dollar. This is the 4-hour chart on Coinbase. And last time we spoke, guys, apologize, haven't had an update in a few days, guys. Been a little bit busy. But the last time we spoke, Bitcoin was trading right around 8,350, 8,400-ish, somewhere thereabouts. We had just broken down here. We're testing support. Bulls were defending support fairly well. And I told you guys what we were going to be watching is for a break above and then an open and close on the 4-hour this time. We're trading the smaller time frames here. So on the 4 hours, looking for an open and close above 84.50. I told you if that does happen, that we'd come back up here and at least test this area right here at about 80. Actually, it was a little bit lower than that. It was right at the top of these wicks, right there at about 87.50 to 8,800. I think I said 87.50, being a little bit more conservative. Sure enough, we did get that open and close right here on May the 31st at about 2020 Greenwich Mean Time, GMT. And then, of course, price came up, and we actually tested higher than that at about 88.32, I believe, was the high before we ended up breaking down here. And remember, guys, I told you this was going to be a critical zone that we had to get above. We were either going to test it and dump, or we were going to test it, and if we got a 4-hour candle opening and closing, again, opening and closing above that 8,800, then we'd probably likely come up and retest that 9,100 high. Really, $9,090 was the high. We did not get that, guys. Came up, got a rejection, and then, of course, we broke back down. The area that we were expecting to be support here, what basically just immediately broke right back down, which was your first red flag. Once we dive deeper into this zone, and then of course waiting for that decisive break below that 81.50 zone, as we've been talking about for so long. We got a 4-hour closing, and then it just dumped. So if you were looking for a tradable short here, if you're waiting for that 4-hour open and close below 81.50, you really didn't get it. And don't feel bad, guys. A lot of people didn't. You could have front-runned it here when we had the 4-hour closing, but you know, that's just, you know, I wouldn't have done it. I didn't do it. You know, I wish I'd like to tell you that I did, tell you that I'm a genius, but I didn't. You know, I'm a more conservative trader, guys. I'd wait for that open close. We didn't get it. It just dumped. Now, I told you if we did break 81.50, that we'd very likely be dumping down into this zone here between 7,600 and 7,500. Remember, this was the area that was resistance, support, resistance, support. So this is a very, very relevant zone. Price did end up dumping down here. Didn't quite make it. We had a lot of people front running this zone, so it didn't make it down to that top. I think the low here was, what was it, 7,700 was the low? Actually, right at least on Coinbase, right at 7,700. So about $100 front run of that support. A little bit of a rally here, guys, and we're going to see that I'm going to be watching this rally very closely. If this rally comes back above 81.50 and we consolidate above 8, and we get a 4-hour candle opening and closing above 81.50. I know a lot of people, some people are calling it 8,200. I believe it's about 81.50 is a more accurate number. So if we get an open and close on a 4-hour above 81.50, I think we're going to take another shot at 8,400, and then we'll have to wait and see how 8,400 plays out. Again, I'm just talking on very small time frames here. But if we get a rejection, if we get a pretty hard rejection at 81.50, I think it'll be a fairly quick drop back down into this zone at about 7,600 to 7,500. This zone here that we've been talking about here. I do think that's a real possibility. And of course, if we get even a 4-hour candle opening and closing above 7,500, at that point, guys, our next stop is going to be, as I've told you guys numerous times before, our next stop is going to be about 7,200, which, looking at the daily, that was our that was the bottom of this little order structure right here. You know, after we had this dump, that's where price came up and established a very small base here on the daily candle on the, let's see, May the 18th and May the 19th, and then we took off. So I can see, and this is also relevant because what was that area of support at that 7,200 was just looking at the body, not at the wicks, but just looking at the body, which, you know, really when you're looking at major supports and resistance, that's what you, especially on larger time frames, that's what you should be looking at. That was the area of resistance back here on May the 11th, 12th, and 13th, and then that became the area of support on May the 18th and the 19th. So I can see, certainly if we break 7,500, could we get a bounce off 7,500? Yes, we absolutely could, but because we had this little front run here, I can certainly see us just dumping below that fairly quickly. So am I going to try to play that bounce off 7,500? I'll probably watch the smaller time frames, maybe take a quick scalp there, guys, but you know, it's going to be a very, very small scalp because, as I said, 7,500 breaks, I think things could get nasty fairly quickly. And again, the first area I'd be looking for that bounce bounce is going to be about 7,200. Actually, let me walk that back for a second, guys. Let me hang on one sec. We may get a decent bounce off of about 7,500. Let me, if I remember swing. Yeah, actually, we may get a little bounce off 7,500, guys. That may actually be a tradable play. Just looking at this, guys, that's really 7,500. Really, it's almost right at 7,500. The way I pulled this swing low, swing high, I'm getting about 74.97. That's 7,500. So yeah, that's going to be your next major algo target, in my opinion. That's going to be, again, just looking at this structure. You go swing low, swing high. The next fib level there is going to be the 382, and that's going to be almost right exactly at 7,500, guys. So you know a lot of you know that, yeah, more than likely you're going to get a bounce off that zone, guys. Especially with the amount of bots in this area, you probably will. Again, I'd have a very tight stop loss there. Don't hold me to it. Nothing is a definite in crypto. But yeah, a small little maybe $100, $200, $150 to $200 bounce, guys. If you're playing a quick scalp, especially on leverage, yeah, I think that's certainly a tradable thing, and I very likely will. But we break below 7,500 decisively, guys. Again, next major hope is going to be 7,200. 7,200 breaks down, guys. It'll vary. 7,000 could hold. The reason I'm looking at 7,000 is obviously back here on May the 12th and the 13th, we created a little base back here as support, and I got rid of my fib a little bit too quickly. Also looking at the fib from that swing low, swing high, guys, right below the 382, that's where the 50 is, almost right at 7,000. Obviously, it's also a good psychological support. So yeah, we could get a bounce off 7,000 as well, guys, but I'm just looking at the chart. I wouldn't expect 7,000. If you're looking for a bottom, you know, I think we're more likely to get a quick bounce. You know, if you're more bullish on this pullback, if you don't think this is the larger pullback that has started yet, and I'm right now, I'm a little agnostic on it right now. I'm watching and waiting, guys. And again, I know that's frustrating to hear from an analyst. Do I think this is the larger breakdown? You know, I could make a case both ways. Looking at the chart right now, I could certainly see a bounce off of 7,500, maybe 7,200, and then maybe a continuation to the upside. That being said, if I come out here and I look at the weekly chart, let me get a little cleaner weekly chart. There we go. If I look at the weekly chart, guys, I mean, there's no question. I pointed this out, guys. I think not the last update, but the week of the update before last. I mean, it just looks like things are topping out here, guys. We've got this perfect little, you know, whether you call this a doji, spinning time, whatever you want to call this candle, last week's candle, it certainly closed as a very, very neutral, possibly reversal candle. And then we've got it now followed by this very bearish looking candle here so far this week. Now, granted, we are still a little bit early in the week, but, you know, overall, guys, we've now taken out the, you know, not only the low of the prior week's candle, but we've also taken out the close of 2 weeks ago. The week before last week's candle here. So that's a very bearish indication, guys, and would suggest possibly a larger correction to come. Now, I'm not hanging my hat on that yet. The reason I don't want to call that just yet is, number one, you know, the first thing about crypto is, as I always tell you, the only thing that's consistent about crypto is it consistently surprises. You know, I'll continue to say that over and over and over again. But looking at longs and shorts, two things. First, looking at longs and shorts, if I can bring them up here. There we go. All right, looking at shorts, well, actually, shorts just started to slowly fall off. But overall, shorts have been in a nice little incline here for the last, since May the 19th. And then, of course, we had a nice little uptick here recently. Now, in the last 8 hours, they've dropped off a little bit. But shorts are, without question, shorts are outpacing longs right now. Looking at longs just started dropping off the board. In fact, since they started dropping off, we've had a drop-off in longs of almost 19%. 16.9%. So yeah, there's no question. Longs dropping off, shorts are starting to rise. If that pattern does continue, you're setting yourself up for a nice short squeeze, and you can certainly see price rising just on that alone. Excuse me. But that's not the only reason that I'm looking for possibly, you know, that's not the only evidence of a possible but a possible shallower correction here. And again, I'm giving you both cases here. But you could also make a case, not just shorts starting to rise and longs starting to drop off the board. If we come over here and we look at CMEs, guys, we've got a fair, and especially on looking at the lower time frame here, I'm pulling it back to the 4 hour, we've got a fairly decent gap that we've got to fill right here between about 72.50-ish and 7,500, guys. Typically, that's going to get filled, and so that is also an area you would look for a bounce. So if we come down here to fill that gap, you certainly can see it coming down here, filling the gap, dropping to about 7,200-ish, 7,250, and then getting a nice bounce off that and continuing to the upside. That's your bullish case for a shallower retracement. The obvious bearish case for a continuation to the downside is we've been long overdue since this parabolic move of Bitcoin, long overdue for a larger 35 to 45% correction, the same kind of correction that we've had every single time Bitcoin has gone parabolic, all throughout its history for the most part. I have yet to find one correction. I think there was like a 32% correction somewhere, but really the majority of them, 99.9, anytime we've gone parabolic, we've had a 35 to 45% correction. Could this be the exception? Absolutely. Is crypto full of exceptions? Absolutely. I'm not telling you anything as a certainty, guys. I'm just kind of telling you what I'm watching, and until we do break a trend, the trend is your friend. As much as I hate to say that, the trend is your friend, guys, and probability can stay on your side if you just follow those basic rules. All right, checking our moving averages, exponential moving averages, guys, we can see that we, again, pretty hard rejection right off the upper Bollinger Band here. This is on the daily chart. Right off the upper Bollinger Band here on May the 30th. Again, that was when we started seeing that, this is looking like a top. Yeah, we had a little bit of a rally right back down, guys. Weren't able to make it back up, even testing the high again. Basically, hit resistance right where we would have expected it, right around 88 to 70, 87 to 8,800, and then a pretty strong rejection. And then, of course, the all-important 21-day EMA. Initially, we found support yesterday right on top of the 21-day EMA, and as of right now, we've obviously broken below it. We're trading just below it as of right now, guys, and we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. If we get a daily candle closing below the 21-day EMA, yes, obviously that's going to be a very bearish sign of strength. We haven't seen that since, very bearish sign of strength. That's an oxymoron. A very bearish sign of weakness. And the last time we had a daily candle closing below the 21-day EMA was, oh man, it's been a while. It was all the way back here. It looks like all the way back here on March the 4th. So yeah, not since March the 4th have we had a daily candle closing below the 21-day EMA, much less opening and closing. Last time we had a daily candle opening and closing below the 21-day EMA was back on February the 7th. So if we get this daily candle closing below the 21-day EMA, yeah, I'm going to start to get that uh-oh feeling. If we have a daily candle tomorrow opening and closing below the 21-day EMA, at that point, I think likely a larger correction, that 35 to 45% correction, is likely, is likely on the table. That's probably what we're going to be looking at. Now, there's a couple things, a couple areas I'm watching very closely, as we pointed out, guys, where if we just go swing low, swing high of this latest structure, from our consolidation point back here from about 5,000 all the way up to the current point, we've got Nick's fib, as I said, was a 382 right around 7,500. Then, of course, we got that $7,000, the 50, and then we've got the all-important 618, guys, and that's going to line up perfectly. This is where I'm looking for a retracement somewhere. If we're having that larger retracement, I'm looking for a bounce around 65 to 6,600. Why? Because obviously that is the golden pocket between the 618 and the 65 fib level. It also lines up almost perfectly with the last area of resistance before we had our breakdown from 6,000 down to 3,150 back in November. And that was the last major area of resistance. We all know what was resistance often acts as support, but even if it doesn't, or excuse me, what was resistance will often act as support. So I'm going to wait and see if this thing ends up coming down and actually acting as support. Certainly it's on the table, especially given that we have confluence with the 618 fib level. If that breaks down, then we're going to be watching a breakdown to about 5,000. And interestingly enough, that's going to bring us to a little different scenario. At that point, we're going to be looking at this whole structure here. So let me zoom out to the weekly. At that point, we're going to be looking at the swing low from our 3,150 all the way up to our swing high of about $9,090. So if I take all of that into account, where does that 618 lie? That 618 lies right where we were consolidating, between the 618 and the 65 fib level, which again is the golden pocket. That lies right where we consolidated, right around 5,000 to 5,500 back all throughout the month of April. And of course, this was the last major area of consolidation on the weekly chart. So can I see it coming back down here? Yes, I certainly can. Now, if we break through 6,000, I'm going to start to get concerned, but it's not until we take this prior area of consolidation out that I will think that this whole thing might have been a sham, that maybe this isn't the bull run everyone is hoping for. I believe that it is. I strongly believe that it is. I believe we are in the bull run, even though we may have a larger correction at hand, as I've been telling you guys for the last, for at least the last month, if not more than that. But so this is the area I'm going to be looking for an absolute bottom, and until we break this area, I will be bullish overall long term on Bitcoin. All right, let's quickly run through some altcoins. I'm going to go ahead and wrap Bitcoin there, guys. Quickly looking at EOS. EOS, not to mix fundamentals with TA, but that's exactly what I'm about to do. I think some people, or a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit disappointed with the announcement on June 1 with EOS. The voice announcement, just a little bit, underwhelming. That being said, I don't want to get into the politics of that, guys. Whatever you believe, you believe. Just looking at the charts here, though, guys, that disappointment is certainly reflected on the chart here. Now, of course, we could also say that this is just following Bitcoin, and maybe that'd be correct as well. But we did take out this base of $7. That is significant in my opinion. We have now taken out the 21-day EMA. We have not yet had a confirmed break below the 21-day EMA. By confirmed, I mean a daily candle opening and closing. We've now had a daily candle opening. Let's see if this daily candle closes below the 21-day EMA. If it does, I would expect us to come back down and retest this zone right around 590 to 610. Let's split the difference and call it $6. If we do come back down into this zone, I'm a buyer laddering between 610 and 590 with a fairly tight stop loss, knowing that if that does end up breaking down, guys, we could break down to about 550 fairly quickly. I'm not saying that's going to happen unless Bitcoin gets a larger correction, and then I think it very likely does. But as of right now, just looking at this chart, it looks to me like we may come back down here, but overall, we may want to get a nice little bounce to retest $7. If we do retest $7 and that starts acting as resistance, then again, I'm going to be eyeballing this area down here between 590 and 610 as a likely target. If we break above $7 and start consolidating above $7, I'm going to get a lot more bullish on EOS, guys, and I think we're going to take another shot at least 770 to 775, this area right here. Looking at our indicators on EOS, let's see, anything significant standing out here? A little bit of hidden bullish divergence actually on the daily RSI, also on the daily MACD, suggesting we may retest $7 here. Let's look at the weekly. Actually, weekly looks a little bit stronger. Let's see, weekly looks. Yeah, weekly looks a little bit stronger, guys. It does suggest that we may be again coming down and testing that $6 range between 590 and 610. But it does look to me like we very likely get a nice bounce off that zone and then come back up here to test $7. So I'm definitely a buyer between 610 and 590 without question. And if I'm trading, I'm going to be targeting $7. We'll all get out. If I'm holding for the long term, I still do believe that EOS is a very, very strong coin to hold for the long term highs, in my opinion, without question. When am I going to start to get really concerned? When we break this area right, well, I drew that off, completely off, right here. If we break above this ascending support line here, guys, I'm going to start to get pretty concerned about EOS, guys. I'm not saying it's going to happen, just saying, in my opinion, that's when I'll start to get, that's when I'll start to get really concerned about EOS. But overall, guys, yeah, maybe a little bit of a retracement. I am looking for a nice little bounce around 590 to 610. Do we have to get down that low? No. As I said, we are seeing some hidden bullish divergence on the RSI and the MACD, the daily RSI and MACD, suggesting we may come back up and test that $7. If we do, and if we start consolidating above $7, I stay bullish. We get a strong rejection. Again, that's what I think we're going to come back down and test that 590 to 610. All right, let's quickly look at... All right, quickly looking at Binance Coin, BNB, had a little bit of a wedge pattern here, broke to the downside, found support right on top of the 21-day EMA. We have broken below it by a wick, but we are trading above the 21-day EMA as of right now, so it is technically acting as support here. If that does hold, I think that's bullish. I think if we get a nice bounce off this zone, guys, again, I do think that's very possible. I'm going to be watching for a decisive break, though, below the 21-day EMA. If we get a daily candle opening and closing below that 21-day EMA, I think we very likely are coming down to $25 down here, guys. Now, we did get a wick. I think the last time I spoke, guys, that I told you that we could see a retracement right down to around the lower $29 range, so 29 to 29.50. We got a wick down here to approximately 29.30-ish. You know, testing this zone here, this is exactly where you'd expect the most bullish retracement. You know, this is where you'd look for a bounce. Now, again, not saying this is the bounce. Still looks to me like we still have possibly some more downside. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But if this does end up breaking down, guys, if we do break below 29, and certainly if we break below the 21-day EMA decisively, again, by decisively in a daily candle opening and closing, I think we're coming down here to 25. 25 looks like a fairly strong support here, guys. It was resistance. That's the area that turned from resistance into support back on May the 16th, and then we just took off from there. So I do think 25 is a very relevant zone. We also have 23, about 23.40 just below that, acting as a relevant zone. So I'm going to be looking to ladder in rather heavy between 25 and 25 and 23.42 with a fairly tight stop loss sitting at about 22.60. If we do break below 22.60, I think it's a fairly quick drop to about 19.75, this little zone. This zone right here. I think that's a very logical target if we do break. I'm not saying we're going to, guys. Just saying, just for planning purposes, you know, that's why you have a stop loss, right? For planning purposes, if that does break, I'm a definite buyer down around 19.75 without question, no question about it. Looking at the weekly chart here, guys, yeah, could this be a healthy pullback? Let me see if there's anything significant here. Yeah, nothing too. Oh, let me get right on the top of that wick. Nothing too significant. Yeah, finding support right on top of the 382 there. So, you know, that does make sense. 25 is sitting right above the golden pocket, or right above the golden ratio there of the 618. So, yeah, definitely a likely target if we do break that 21-day EMA. To the upside, guys, I'm going to start to get very bullish on BNB again if we do take out this zone right here. That sits at approximately 33.40. If we get a daily candle opening and closing above 33.40, I do think at that point we're going to be taking another shot at the all-time high at about 35.71, and we very likely take it out if we do end up, again, if we do get a daily candle opening and closing above 33.61. All right, guys, I'm going to have to pick up the speed here a little bit. I'm kind of pressed for time. Looking at BAT, Basic Attention Token, kind of operating within a descending channel here. Really finding some resistance at the 21-day EMA here, guys. But really, more importantly than that, is this channel that we're operating in, guys. We can see that 32 has been a decent support here, guys. This was the area that was resistance, turned into support. Of course, did break below here, guys, but has been support here ever since breaking above on May the 10th. So I'm going to be watching this 32. Really, it's 30, yeah, actually it's almost right at 32. So I'm going to be watching this zone very quickly. If we get a daily candle opening and closing below 32 cents, I think it could be a very quick drop down to about 28 cents, 27.9 to be precise. And I'm a definite buyer between 27.9 and 25.7-ish, somewhere in this zone. I'm an absolute buyer of BAT. I do think BAT it's performed quite well in relation to other altcoins. With the drop of Bitcoin, it's kind of been a nice hedge against Bitcoin if you do own some. And I do love BAT in that it has a very good use case to it, kind of like Binance Coin. It's a usable token. It's not just a bunch of promises. It's got a very strong team, and this is just all my opinion, not financial advice. Very strong team behind it, guys. I do like what they're doing. So I do think overall BAT is an excellent long-term hold. In the short term here, guys, in the short term, I'd wait for a break above 38.2 cents, a decisive break above 38.2 cents, really to break us out of this channel. If it does do that, I'm going to start to get very bullish. To the downside, guys, as I said, if we do break below 32 cents, I'm going to be looking for a drop down to about 27.9 cents, where I would definitely be a buyer between 27.9 and 25.7. Really, actually about 25.9 with the stop loss at about 25. I'd keep a stop loss very tight, because below that it could just free fall all the way down to about 21 cents. I don't see that happening, to be fair, guys. I do believe that this 25.7 to 27.9 acts as a very strong support if we do end up coming down here. And 32 could very likely hold, guys. All right, quickly checking Ethereum. Ethereum was operating within kind of a rising wedge, really just kind of a flat rising flag pattern there. And we finally did break out of that flag pattern, which again was bearish. That was suggesting a break to the downside. We are finding support right on top of the 21-day EMA. We have broken below it here. We've wicked below it, but price is trading back above it. Again, like everything else, I'm looking for a decisive break below 21-day EMA. And by decisive, I mean a daily candle opening and closing below that zone. If that does happen, I'm going to be watching for another drop down into this zone between 220 and 230. That I do believe that's going to act as a fairly strong support, and unless Bitcoin does break down pretty substantially, which is a real possibility. Don't get me wrong, but Ethereum is looking stronger than Bitcoin to me right now. We have this area that was a major supply zone that it did break up above. I mean, just a nice massive breakout above here, and then what was resistance started acting as support. So we have this between 220 and 230, what was resistance turning into support here, and we've actually established a bit of a supply zone right here. Let me zoom into the 4 hour because it's much more pronounced on the 4 hour chart, guys. Excuse me, right into that zone. You can see that we've established a bit of a supply zone where prices come down, wick, came down again, wick, and that supply zone seems to be getting higher. We've had a series of higher lows here, even with this breakdown. So, I do believe there's a lot of buy orders, a lot of people willing to buy up Ethereum between 230 and 220. That being said, this is, again, a very, very unpredictable market. So if 220 breaks down, I do think it could be a very quick drop down here. Looking out on the weekly chart, we can see it much clearer. If 220 does break down, it could be a very quick drop down here to 185. Again, 185 was support back here in 2018, the end of 2018, and then what was support turned into resistance, turned back into support here on the week of May the 13th, and then we just took off from there. So 185 is an absolute possibility if we get a decisive break below 220. By decisive, I mean a daily candle opening and closing below 220. Until then, I think we'll very likely get bounces all throughout this zone. So I'm going to be I will be very likely a buyer between. Probably, I'm a little bit more conservative, so probably instead of 230, I'm likely a buyer between about 225 and 220, with a very tight stop at about 210 to 215, probably a laddered stop between 210 and 215, knowing that if that area does break, we could very likely find ourselves down at 185 very quickly, and at 185, that's an absolute buy on Ethereum, in my opinion. Not financial advice, guys, not a financial advisor. To the upside, I need to see us break above 280 and start consolidating above 280. Let me go back to the daily. Start consolidating above 280. If we can break above 280 and we get a daily candle both opening and closing above 280. Remember, this is a very strong supply zone, guys. This is the supply zone that has to get taken out. This is an area where there's a lot of sell orders. As we can see from back in August of 18, there's a lot of sell orders. Price just collapsed down here, came back up in here on May the 16th. Hard rejection, back up again numerous times between May 26th and May the 30th. Again, hard rejection each time before we find ourselves where we are now. So if we get a daily candle both opening and closing above 280, that'll be the first time since September of 2018 that's happened. And then at that point, I get very bullish on Ethereum and very likely will become a buyer looking for a break to at least 300. And looking at the bigger picture, if we get a decisive break above 300, guys, in other words, a daily candle both opening and closing above 300, sky at that point would be the limit, guys, until we get up to approximately 400 would be the first area of any kind of resistance. But really, it's not until we get to I would say about 420 before I start to get very concerned. So we got a very, very tradable zone between 300 and 400, guys, if we can get there. Now, again, that's a big if, and until we get there, guys, we just, we do what we can. Very small trades, very conservative, in my opinion, not financial advice. And again, you're a buyer down here, you're a seller. If I'm looking at scalping, guys, I'm a buyer between 225 and 230, and I'm a seller right in the bottom of this zone right here, which again was support, and then of course price has been unable to decisively break below that. But if we do, that's the area that I would expect to start acting at least a temporary resistance, and that's at about 245. So I'm a buyer at about 225, telling it about 245 if I'm looking for a quick scalp. Again, just my opinion, not financial advice at all. All right, switching over to Litecoin. Litecoin is, again, looking very similar to a lot of other altcoins. We're sitting right atop of the 21-day EMA. That is acting as support for now, even though we've wicked below it. A little more structure to Litecoin. It is one of your more bullish-looking coins, guys, which makes it a little bit easier to trade. This area right at 100 is a good psychological support. That was an area of resistance back in here on April the 2nd. Again, resistance again on May the 15th, and then we finally broke that resistance on May the 25th. with, so that what was resistance will very likely act as support, is acting as support as of right now. If we get a daily candle opening and closing below the 21-day EMA, which very likely, doesn't have to, but very likely would take us below $100, I think it'll be a fairly quick drop down to about $91. So we could find ourselves dropping about 9 to 10% in a very short amount of time. But I'm a buyer of Litecoin at $90 to $91, guys. Without question, I would expect at least a decent scalp off of that zone, guys. I can see it hitting $90 back up to about $100 before possibly continuing back down, but it should provide a decent, again, a decent scalp if we do end up seeing that. Looking at our indicators, getting a little bit of hidden bullish divergence on the RSI and the daily RSI and the daily MACD. Just looking at the histogram and their RSI there, guys. A little bit of bullish divergence there, so would suggest a little bit of an uptick here. I wouldn't read too much into that, though, because it is just very, very slight. If we look at this overall structure here, guys, let's see. Let's go swing low, swing high from this just smaller structure from back here starting on April the 30th. We can see we're sitting right on top of the 382. Next major fib level sits at about 93.40-ish. So yeah, definitely that would coincide with us breaking down to about that $91 to $90 range, maybe wicking below, hitting that 0.5, wicking below to about 90 to 91, guys. If you want to front run it at about $93, guys, that would make sense in my opinion. Just again, have a very tight stop loss, because if $90 does break down, we're going to find ourselves quickly down to about $84, $85, guys, fairly quickly. And that would be, I would expect to find a decent area of support down there for numerous reasons, not only because that's the 618 fib, but this is a golden pocket between the 618 and the 65, but also we have this larger trend line that starts to come into play, this ascending support line that's been in place since January, basically since January of this year. To the upside, I'm looking for a break above, let's call it about $116. If we get a decisive break above 116, a daily candle opening and closing above 116, I think we at least take another shot at this $122 to $125 support. Now this support, or excuse me, resistance. This resistance between 122 and 125 is significant. If we can break above 125 decisively, in other words, a daily candle opening and closing above 125, there's just not much resistance until we get up to about 140. So that would certainly bring you a nice, looking forward, guys, just you kind of plan ahead. If this does happen, then I'm going to do that, guys. Remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, basically. I know that's a cliche, but it's also very, very true. So just kind of giving you all kinds of scenarios, guys, so you know what to do. If this happens, then that happens, and you have an idea of how I'm thinking. But that's how I would kind of play Litecoin for now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap Litecoin there. All right, quickly looking at Ripple, the coin everybody loves to hate. I feel like a broken record here, guys. Once again, we're finding support right on top of the 21-day EMA. That is acting as support, even though we've had this wick down below it. The wick did touch right where we would have expected it to find support, which was right around 37 cents, guys. Bulls were able to push it right back up to about 41 cents, which is where we're currently trading. I do think if we do end up having a daily candle opening and closing below the 21-day EMA, I do think that we have a good shot at coming down to lower portion of this zone, guys, at possibly testing 38 to 37 cents. I would be a buyer between 38 and 37 cents, guys, but only a very quick scalp. I'd scalp, again, between 38 and 37 cents, targeting 39, maybe 39.5, but I'd get in and I'd get out. Ripple is fairly unpredictable. Coming out here to the weekly. Yeah, looking at the weekly, actually the weekly is looking a little bit stronger than most, even though we've had this, I know, this very bearish engulfing looking candle here, guys. It's really kind of testing. I mean, just let's see, looking at just this week alone, which just started yesterday, we've gone from 46.5 down to 39.5. I mean, that's pretty significant range here, guys. So, you know, it just tells you that Ripple is very likely very manipulated, but it also could be a decent hedge against Bitcoin here. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out, guys. We do have, let's see, one, two, yeah, lower lows, or excuse me, lower highs here. But if we do end up breaking to the upside here, guys, and just looking at the weekly chart, if we can get above 47 cents and get a, let's go back to the daily. If we can get into the daily, if we can get above 47 cents, guys, I do get a little more bullish. I do think that we have another shot at taking out this prior high, which is at about 47.8. Let's call it 48 cents. This 47 to 50 cents goes those guys. This is a very strong resistance, as I keep telling you guys, until we can blow the lid off this 47 to 50 cents. Let's call it 50 cents because that's the top. That is the lid technically. If we can get above 50 cents, guys, I'm very bullish on Ripple. If it can clear 50 cents, I think between 50 cents and yeah, between 50 cents and about 58 cents, things, I think it could be a very quick rise up to about 58, 60 cents if we can clear that 50 cent range. For now, guys, as I said, I'm a buyer between 38 and 37 cents, knowing if 37 cents does break, so I'd have my stop loss right below this prior wick, which sits at about 36 cents. If we get a daily candle both opening and closing below 37 cents, and then certainly if we take out 36 cents, it could get very bearish for Ripple very quickly, and I can see us dropping down here to at least 31 cents, if not 28 to 30 cents, somewhere in this range, guys. But we're not there yet. As of right now, I would expect 37 to 39 cents to act as a fairly strong support, but I would not be a buyer until I get down to about 38 to 37 cents, where I would stack my buys in. But again, I'd be going fairly light, guys. I think there are better coins to trade, or better yet, just wait until Bitcoin decides what it's doing and then start to ease your way back into your altcoins. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things there, guys. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please let me know in the comments section below. As always, we'll appreciate an upvote if you have enjoyed this content. Until next time, guys, please trade safe. Take care of yourselves. This is Workin, signing out.